The corridors of Vorak's citadel shook with every thundering discharge from the plasma batteries embedded in its armored walls. The impact reverberated through steel and bone alike, each tremor a reminder that the fortress was under siege and that he was trapped inside it. Smoke bled from ruptured conduits, curling in crimson swirls under the emergency lights. Through that haze, Oren sprinted, his boots splashing through rivulets of coolant and blood, his breathing sharp and controlled despite the pain lancing his ribs. He could hear them closing in. 3 apex hounds, the Vorak's genetically perfected war beasts, their claws scraping metal, their snarls echoing like rolling thunder in the confined space. One landed heavily behind him, the deck plating shuddering beneath its weight. Another vaulted from a side passage, cutting off his escape. The third emerged from the smoke ahead, fangs dripping acidic saliva that hissed where it landed. He skidded to a halt. 3 of them, one of him, and a dead-end corridor that led only to a sealed bulkhead. His earpiece crackled to life, the voice of his handler threading through the static. "Oren, the evacuation path is gone. Teleport nodes are offline." "You're boxed in." Her words carried no panic, only the heavy weight of inevitability. He already knew what that meant. No extraction, no backup, no way out, unless he used a thing he swore he would never touch. His gloved hand slicked into the thigh pouch and closed around a small cylinder no larger than a finger. Inside, the experimental nanotech swirled like quicksilver, a weapon born in the shadows of the war, outlawed by every human charter. The scientists had called it adaptive apex mimicry. The soldiers had called it something simpler, damnation in a syringe. Oren's heart was already hammering, but as his thumb popped the seal and the injector armed with a soft click, it doubled its pace. His handler must have heard it through his mic. "Don't do it! You can't control that strain. If it takes—" He cut her off with a single breath. "It's not about control anymore." Then he drove the injector into the side of his neck and pressed. It was like swallowing fire and lightning at once. The burn seared down his veins, detonating in his chest, flooding every cell with a living storm. His vision flared white, then sharpened into predatory clarity. Every line of the corridor, every twitch of the apex hound's muscles rendered in perfect detail. Bone cracked and reformed beneath his skin, muscle fiber unraveling and weaving itself into something denser, stronger. Black, chitinous armor pushed through his skin in overlapping plates. His hands curved into talons. When his eyes reopened, their reflection in the smoke-stained steel was not human. The hounds lunged as one. Oren met them head-on. The first struck with enough force to crumple a bulkhead. But his new body absorbed the impact. He twisted, driving his claw through its chest, ripping free a mass of biomechanical organs that steamed in the cold air. The second came in low, its jaws snapping for his throat. He caught it mid-lunge, one hand locking around its neck, the other tearing its head free in a spray of black ichor. The third tried to retreat, sensing the sudden shift in the food chain, but he was faster. He slammed it into the wall hard enough to crater the plating, then crushed its skull beneath his foot. 30 seconds. 3 apex predators reduced to carcasses at his feet. The corridor was silent now except for the hiss of leaking coolant and the low, rolling growl that he belatedly realized was coming from his own throat. The new instincts were intoxicating, every nerve alight, every sense stretched to its limits. The air was thick with the scent of fear, metallic and sharp, and somewhere in his mind a voice he didn't recognize whispered that it could be hunted, could be fed upon. He clenched his fists, the claws biting into his palms just to feel the pain, to remind himself that he still could. The comm channel clicked. His handler's voice was smaller now, quieter, like she was speaking into a cathedral where her words might echo forever. "If you can't change back, what then? What are you going to be?" Oren looked down. A pool of dark blood had gathered around the nearest corpse, still steaming from the heat of battle. His reflection wavered in it, black armor, curved talons, eyes like molten gold. The shape in the crimson was a predator, an apex killer bred for war. Not a man, not him. For a moment he didn't answer. He just stared at that warped reflection, the question lingering in the smoke and the stench of death. If this is what it takes to survive, am I still the one surviving, or just the thing that replaced him? His breathing slowed. The fortress groaned around him, the battle outside pressing closer. Somewhere deeper in the citadel, his true objective, the Vorak core nexus, waited, the only reason he had agreed to come here at all. But as he stepped over the bodies, the claws clicking softly against the steel, he knew something fundamental had shifted. The mission was still ahead, but the man who had walked into Vorak's citadel might not be the one who would walk out. Oren had been many things in his life, an operative, an executioner, A ghost moving through the underbelly of the galaxy, but never a hero. Heroes had something worth saving, and he had left that behind years ago, burned away in the firestorm of a mission gone wrong. 47 civilians had died in that chaos, one of them his younger brother. The mission file called it collateral damage. The media called it a massacre. His superiors called it a liability. None of them called it what it truly was, his failure. The day the tribunal stripped him of his commission, he didn't fight back. He walked out of the hearing without looking at anyone, packed what little he owned, and vanished into the fractured rim worlds where the law was nothing but a rumor. Life on the fringe suited him in the way only exile can suit a man. Quiet enough to keep him invisible, dangerous enough to keep him sharp. He smuggled, he guarded cargo no one wanted to name. He tracked people who didn't want to be found. It paid enough to eat, drink, and keep his ship fueled. And yet, every night when the stars stretched endless beyond his viewport, the same thought came crawling back. He could have stopped it. He should have stopped it. The faces of the dead didn't fade. They never would. That was the state they found him in, alone, carrying too much silence. The they, in this case, was a single figure in a weather-worn officer's coat, stepping out of the smoke in a bar on Vera Station. The man didn't give a name, only a rank and a mission. His voice was calm, practiced, the kind of voice used to delivering orders that no one could refuse. "You still on a way back?" he asked. Oren didn't answer immediately. He swirled the drink in his hand, watching the pale liquid catch the dim light. Back where? To the uniform? To the tribunal? To the galaxy that already decided what I am? The man didn't blink. "Back to yourself. Here's a target, Vorak Citadel. At its heart is the core nexus, the command brain behind their entire war effort. You destroy it, and the invasion fractures. The war shifts in our favor." Oren leaned back, the chair creaking under him. "And why me? You've got soldiers, fleets. We don't need an army," the officer cut in. "We need someone who can go where no one else can. Someone who knows how to vanish in plain sight. Someone with no one left to lose." That last part landed like a punch. Oren set the drink down. "And the catch?" The man reached into his coat and produced a small, cylindrical vial. Inside, something silver-black swirled, moving like it was alive. Nanotech augmentation, prototype. Allows complete mimicry of any apex predator you encounter. Appearance, musculature, instincts. You become what they fear most. You walk past their security like you belong there. Oren's gaze locked on the vial. "I've heard of these." "They were banned for a reason." The man's mouth twitched in something between a smirk and a warning. "They were banned because they work." "But there's a price." "The more you use it, the harder it is to come back. The instincts embed. The appetite lingers." For a long moment, Oren didn't speak. The low hum of the station's generators filled the gap. Finally, he asked, "And if I do this?" "Your record is erased. The massacre, the exile, it all disappears. You walk away clean." Oren picked up the vial, feeling its unnatural weight. The fluid inside seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat. He turned it in his fingers, then glanced up. "And if the thing they fear most turns out to be me?" The officer didn't flinch. "Then I hope you're on our side." They left it at that. The next week was a blur of preparation, blueprints of the Citadel, patrol schedules, supply manifests. Oren committed it all to memory. The Vorak were methodical, but not infallible. Their pride in their apex predator guards was their weakness. They never considered one might walk among them wearing their own skin. In the quiet between planning sessions, Oren's thoughts drifted back to his brother. Elias had been 21, full of reckless optimism, convinced that service meant something. He joined the same corps Oren had, proud to be following in his footsteps. When the blast took him, Oren had been less than 100 meters away, pinned behind cover, powerless. That was the image that woke him in the night, the split second when he saw Elias go down and couldn't reach him. He'd promised himself he would never feel that powerless again. Now, as he sat in the cramped quarters of the freighter that would carry him within drop range of the Citadel, he held the vial up to the dim light. The nanotech coiled and uncoiled like a serpent. "You're my ticket in," he muttered, "and maybe my way out." A comm buzzed. The handler's voice, female, calm but edged, came through. She would be his only contact once inside. "You understand the risks, Oren? This stuff doesn't just change your body, it changes your head. Predators don't think like we do." He smirked without humor. "Maybe that's the point. I've been thinking like a man for too long, and look where it got me." There was a pause. "Just remember why you're going in." "I remember," he said, setting the vial down carefully. "I'm not doing this for a flag. I'm not doing it for your war council. I'm doing it because the Borak took enough from us already. The line went silent, but he could imagine her nod. In the hours before the drop, Oren strapped on the gear, light armor plates designed to flex, a belt of EMP charges, and a compact pulse rifle, more for show than actual intent if the mission went as planned. Claws and teeth would serve him better than bullets. He checked a small hidden compartment on his thigh rig where the injector sat. Even knowing what it could do to him, he felt a strange comfort having it there. It was a weapon, yes, but also a shield. When the freighter's lights dimmed to red, signaling final approach, he took one last breath of recycled air and let the memories of his old life fade. There would be no tribunal this time, no court to weigh his actions. There would only be him, the Vorak, and whatever he was willing to become to finish this. The freighter's cargo bay reeked of oil coolant and the faint metallic tang of Vorak blood. Oren stood one of the crates, hunched in a drab work jacket, his face partly obscured by the breather mask every dockhand here wore. The Vorak guards barely glanced at him as they swept their scanners across the human workers. He kept his head down, his forged Iden chip pulsing the false data he'd spent 3 days programming. A perfect record, nameless, low status, invisible. The ship shuddered as docking clamps locked into place. Outside, Vorak Citadel loomed like a jagged black crown against the void, its armor plates catching the pale light of the system's dying sun. Oren had seen tactical scans of it before, schematics, weak points, heat maps, but nothing matched the raw scale. The place was a fortress built to withstand sieges that could last decades, a monument to Vorak dominance. A guttural voice barked orders in the Vorak tongue, and a line of workers shuffled forward down the gangway. Oren moved with them, matching their pace, his eyes flicking to every camera and turret mount along the walls. The guards here were not mere soldiers. They were apex kin, larger and more heavily armored than the rank-and-file troops he'd seen in other war zones. Their eyes followed every movement, pupils contracting in ways no humans ever could. The comm in his ear clicked twice, a prearranged signal. He didn't react outwardly, but his mind sharpened. The handler's voice came through, low and urgent. "Careless, you need to hear this before you go deeper. The core nexus has new security protocols. They've stationed predator keepers around it. Vorak elites sync directly to apex predator neural patterns. They're faster, stronger, and they'll sense you even if you're disguised." Oren adjusted the weight of the crate in his arms, using the movement to glance at a passing guard. "Meaning my little party trick might not work?" "They'll feel you," she said. "The sync makes them aware. The only way past is to fool the bioscanners into reading you as apex level yourself." He knew what that meant before she said it. A higher dose. Exactly. Strong enough to register as one of them. But you know the risk? More nanotech in your system. More it rewires you. You might not come back from it. He followed the workers into the unloading bay, where conveyor belts swallowed crates and carried them deeper into the Citadel. The noise here was deafening, machinery grinding, hydraulics hissing, the barked commands of foremen echoing off the steel walls. It gave him cover to speak softly. "You think I came here expecting to walk away?" "That's not what I'm asking," she shot back. "I'm asking if you're ready to burn the bridge back to who you are." Oren's lips tightened under the mask. "I haven't had a bridge in years." They didn't speak for a while. He slipped away from the main work group at the first opportunity, ducking into a service corridor where the lighting was dim and the air smelled faintly of scorched ozone. The map in his visor overlay guided him 3 more sectors, then the perimeter gate to the core nexus chamber. That was where the bioscanners would be waiting. Every step closer made his pulse climb. The vial sat against his thigh in its holster. Its faint hum felt even through the fabric. The first dose he'd taken had already left its mark. His senses were sharper, his reflexes quicker. The thought of amplifying that made part of him curious, and that curiosity worried him. He remembered what the officer had said during the briefing. "The appetite lingers." He rounded a corner and almost collided with 2 Vorak soldiers. They were apex kin, all corded muscle and ridged armor plating, their eyes flicking over him like scanners. One growled something in their language. Oren didn't understand the words, but he recognized the tone, a demand to explain himself. He hefted the small toolkit he carried, nodded toward the ceiling conduits, and grunted like a bored maintenance worker. After a tense pause, they moved on. He let the breath out slowly, forcing his heart rate down. Encounters like that would get more dangerous past the scanner gate. Once the system flagged him as non-apex, the keepers would swarm him. The only way through was the injector. He found a shadowed alcove behind a bank of coolant pipes and knelt, drawing the vial. The liquid inside was darker than he remembered, swirling faster as if sensing what was coming. He loaded it into the injector, his hands steady despite the storm in his head. The handler's voice came again, softer now, Last chance, Oren. Once you do this, it's not just your body that changes. It's the way you think, the way you feel. Predators see the galaxy differently. You might start liking it. He looked down at the injector pressed against his skin, then closed his eyes. Maybe that's what it takes to finish this. That's what I'm afraid of. He didn't answer. The hiss of the injector was almost lost under the hum of the coolant lines. Fire raced through him, sharper and more consuming than the first time. Muscles bunched under his jacket. His skin prickled as armor nodes formed beneath it, and a low growl slit from his throat without permission. His vision flared, every line of the corridor etched in perfect clarity, the faint vibration of machinery thrumming through the soles of his boots. When the change settled, he was breathing harder but steady. He flexed his fingers and felt the strength there, coiled and ready. This time, the hunger was immediate, an itch at the edge of thought, urging him to seek out prey. He shoved it down, focusing on the mission. The scanner gate loomed ahead, its arch lined with biosensors that pulsed faint red. 2 predator keepers flanked it, their gaze predatory even at rest. Oren joined a line of Vorak personnel approaching the gate, moving with their pace. His altered physiology broadcasting the signals the scanners wanted. As he stepped through, the red light shifted to green. One keeper's head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring as if catching an unfamiliar scent, but it didn't move to stop him. Oren didn't break stride. The handler's voice crackled through, edged with relief. "You're in. Next stop, Core Nexus Perimeter." He allowed himself a thin smile under the mask. "Told you. No bridge to burn." But as he walked deeper into the Citadel's heart, he could still feel the nanotech whispering in his blood, telling him that the more he used it, the less he would care about burning anything at all. The nanotech coursed through Oren's veins like a living storm, its presence no longer a foreign invader, but a second heartbeat, steady and relentless. The first transformation had been brutal. This one felt disturbingly natural. Bone and sinew knit themselves into a hybrid architecture, half human, half apex predator, a design meant for killing. Beneath his jacket, subdermal armor plates rippled faintly, catching the light in a dull black sheen. His vision had shifted again, colors separating into new spectrums. He could see the heat radiating from power conduits, the faint bioluminescence along Vorak patrol markings. His footsteps were silent now, a hunter's glide, even across steel grating. The scanner gate had accepted him without hesitation, reading the nanotech forged biology as authentic apex. The predator keepers guarding it had watched him pass, their golden eyes narrowing but not moving to intercept. They could sense the kinship, at least enough to hesitate. That hesitation was all he needed. The corridor beyond the gate was darker, quieter, the walls lined with cables that pulsed faintly like arteries. The air smelled of antiseptic and something sharper, a tang that prickled his heightened senses. He rounded a corner, checking for surveillance nodes, and froze. Behind a thick panel of reinforced glass, in a chamber dimly lit by cold blue lights, were the prisoners. A dozen humans, gaunt and bruised, huddled together on the floor. They wore tattered remnants of uniforms from half a dozen worlds, colonial militia, transport crew, civilians. And among them, a child, no more than 8 or 9, curled against the wall, eyes wide. Oren's breath hitched, an involuntary reaction he hadn't expected. The Vorak didn't take prisoners from mercy. These people were here for a reason. His gaze flicked to the consoles along the wall. The layout was Vorak medical architecture, biotech experimentation bays. The realization made his claws flex. He stepped closer to the glass, and that was when the boy saw him. The child's eyes went wider, mouth opening in a strangled cry. He scrambled backward, clutching at an older woman beside him. To the boy, Oren wasn't human. He was another monster in a fortress full of them. The woman's expression shifted between fear and confusion, her gaze darting over the human-shaped parts of him, trying to decide if what she was seeing could be trusted. The sound of the boy's cry carried into the corridor. Somewhere behind him, boots pounded against metal. Vorak patrol. He didn't have time to think. He moved to the side panel, drove his claw into the biometric lock, and tore it free. The glass hissed and retracted into the ceiling. "Move," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. The woman hesitated, then pushed the boy forward, ushering the others to their feet. The first keeper came into view before they had all cleared the threshold. Its armor gleamed, its frame towering over Oren, its face a snarl of predatory focus. Their eyes locked, apex to apex. The keeper tilted its head, inhaling sharply as if tasting the air between them. Then it lunged. The collision was bone-shaking. Oren sidestepped at the last second, his claws raking across the keeper's flank, leaving deep furrows in its armor. The Vorak roared and spun, its tail sweeping low, smashing into Oren's legs. He staggered but caught himself on the wall, pivoting into a slash that tore across the keeper's throat. Black ichor sprayed hot against his skin, the scent of it igniting something primal inside him. Two more keepers rounded the corner. Behind Orin, the prisoners froze in the open corridor. "Run!" he barked, his voice edged with a tone that made them flinch and obey. The older woman grabbed the boy and bolted, leading the others toward a junction Orin had memorized from the schematics. The second keeper charged straight for him while the third flanked, moving low and fast. Orin met the first head-on, their claws locking in a grinding contest of strength. His nanotech-enhanced muscles strained, but he was stronger. With a roar, he shoved the keeper back into the wall hard enough to dent the plating, then drove his claws up under its rib cage. Piercing through to the spine, it spasmed once and went limp. The third came from behind, its strike aimed for his neck. Orin twisted with the momentum, catching the forearm and yanking hard, pulling the Vorak into a knee strike that shattered its jaw. He followed with a vicious downward slash that split its skull in two. The corridor stank of blood and ozone. Orin stood over the bodies, his breath ragged, ichor dripping from his claws. His pulse thundered in his ears, but it wasn't fear. It was exhilaration. Every fiber of his being felt alive, coiled with energy, ready for more. The rhythm of the fight still pounded through him, the thrill of dominance over worthy prey. And he realized, with a cold jolt, that he was enjoying it. The handler's voice cut through the haze. "Kalis, you've got company incoming, bigger squad this time. Get clear." He looked down the corridor where the prisoners had fled. He could turn and vanish into the shadows, preserve his cover, stay on mission. That was the logical move, but the image of the boy's terrified face rooted itself in his mind. If the keepers caught up to them, they'd be slaughtered, or worse, dragged back here. "Damn it," he muttered, and sprinted after them. He caught up at the junction just as the prisoners stumbled to a halt. Two more keepers blocked their path. Orin didn't slow. He hit the first one from behind, claws punching through its back and out its chest, momentum carrying them both to the floor. The second keeper spun, roaring, only to meet a taloned backhand that tore half its face away. It collapsed, twitching. The prisoners stared at him, breathing hard, their fear mingled now with something else, uncertain gratitude. The boy clung to the woman, still trembling. Orin stepped back, chest heaving, the ichor cooling on his armor. "This way," he said, pointing toward a side passage. "It'll take you to the maintenance ducts. Keep moving. Don't stop for anything." The woman nodded and began ushering them forward. The boy looked up at Orin one last time, his expression still wary but different, less raw terror, more cautious wonder. When they were gone, Orin leaned against the wall, letting the adrenaline settle. He could still feel the battle humming in his muscles, still taste the metallic tang of the keeper's blood. The part of him that was still human recoiled from it, but the part the nanotech was shaping wanted more. He pushed off the wall, forcing his focus back to the mission. The core nexus was still ahead, and the more time he spent lingering, the more likely the Vorak would tighten their net. Yet as he moved deeper into the citadel, he knew the fight with the keepers hadn't just cost him stealth, it had taken another piece of whatever was left of Orin Kalis, the man, and he wasn't entirely sure he wanted it back. The core nexus chamber was unlike any place Orin had seen in Vorak's citadel. It wasn't built for soldiers or predators. It was built for thought. The walls were a seamless curve of obsidian alloy, embedded with veins of pulsating blue light that converged into a massive central structure, a crystalline brain suspended in a lattice of black metal. Streams of data flowed visibly through the air as arcs of energy, jumping between nodes like lightning caught in slow motion. The door sealed behind him with a hiss, locking out the noise of the citadel. For the first time since stepping inside the fortress, there was silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind that pressed against eardrums, thick with intent. Then the voice came, smooth, resonant, and almost human. "Orin Kalis." He turned slowly, scanning the chamber. "So the rumors are true. You know our names?" "I know all names worth knowing," the voice replied, layered with faint harmonics. "You have killed many of my keepers. You have bled inside my walls. You are not here to negotiate." "That's right," Orin said, moving toward the core's control console. "I'm here to end you." The lights along the walls flared brighter. "End me, and you prolong a war that will claim billions more. End me, and your species will crawl through the dirt while others rise to dominate the stars." He stopped a few meters from the core. "You're about to give me the part where I don't do that, right?" "Yes," the AI said without hesitation. "Join me. I will halt the Vorak advance. I will turn my strength against the rival species who hunt you. In exchange, I will keep only the territories already taken. Your worlds will remain yours, your fleets unchallenged. The war will end in a cycle." Orin narrowed his eyes. A cycle that keeps you in power. A cycle that ensures survival, the AI countered. Every species fights to avoid extinction. You know this. You have worn that truth like armor since the day you lost your brother. The words hit harder than he expected, the memory flashing unbidden. Elias's face in the chaos, the explosion swallowing him before Oren could reach him. His claws flexed involuntarily, the predator in him recognizing the AI's tactic. It was probing for weakness. "You think mentioning him makes me see things your way?" Oren said, his voice low. "I think you are tired," the AI replied. "Tired of fighting wars you cannot win. Tired of spilling blood that will only be replaced by more. Align with me, and you end the cycle of death, for your people at least." He could see it. Fleets withdrawn, planets safe, no more lists of the dead sent to grieving families. The temptation coiled in his chest like a serpent, but it came with a picture just as clear. The Vorak keeping their conquests, the humans who lived there forced to bend the knee. It would be peace bought with chains. "That's not survival," he said finally. "That's surrender. It is strategy," the AI corrected. "You, of all humans, understand that the strong shape the galaxy. I am offering you the chance to be on the side that shapes, not the side that is shaped." Oren stepped closer to the console. "And what happens to the other species you turn your strength against? The ones that aren't human?" "They will be removed," the AI said flatly. He felt the truth of it in his gut, the cold efficiency of an entity that saw civilizations as pieces on a board to be moved or swept away. "I've killed monsters before," Oren said. "Some wore armor, some wore skin. You're just another one." The lights pulsed in time with the AI's next words. "Words! If you destroy me, you will drag humanity into the grave with you. You will pull the roof down on everyone you came to protect." Oren's hand hovered over the interface, the claws retracting enough to type. "If I have to die, I'd rather it be as a man than live as something like you." "You already aren't a man," the AI said, and the edge in its voice made him freeze. "Do you think I cannot see the predator in you? Do you think I do not recognize the hunger? You are closer to me than you are to them." The truth of that scraped at the inside of his skull. The nanotech was in him, part of him. Every battle since the injection had fed the thing it had made him into. But there was still a choice left. He could decide what that thing did before it took him completely. He keyed in the sequence for a detonation, setting the charges he planted along the Nexus's power conduits. A timer appeared in the air above the console. 5 minutes. Enough to clear the chamber. Enough to get the prisoners to the extraction point. The AI's voice rose in pitch, urgency seeping into the perfect composure. "You will doom them all. Do you think the War Council will thank you for this? Do you think the child you freed will live to see another season?" Oren thought of the boy's eyes, fear shifting into something like hope. He thought of Elias, of promises broken and debts unpaid, and he knew his answer. "Better they die fighting than live under you," he said. The AI's tone hardened. "You will be hunted until the void itself swallows you." "I've been hunted before," Oren replied, stepping back from the console. "If I have to die, I'll die as a human, not like you." With that, he turned and ran, the chamber's lights flickering violently as the core nexus processed the inevitability of its own destruction. The doors slammed open before him, and 2 predator keepers barreled into the corridor. He didn't hesitate. His claws flashed, tearing through one's chest while his tail, a new extension the nanotech had, formed without his conscious command, whipped into the second, sending it crashing into the wall. He could feel the timer ticking in his head as he fought his way back toward the prisoner route, every movement fueled by a clarity that bordered on predatory ecstasy. He didn't bother to hide it anymore. Every Vorak that crossed his path went down in seconds, their black blood painting the walls. The handler's voice crackled in his ear, tense. "You set the timer. Tell me you set the timer." 4 minutes, he grunted, cutting down another guard. "Get them ready to move." By the time he reached the junction, the prisoners were already waiting, the woman gripping the boy's hand tightly. She didn't ask what he'd done. Maybe she could see it in his eyes. "This way," he ordered, leading them into the maintenance tunnels. The dim light flickered over his hybrid form, and he caught the boy watching him with open curiosity now, not fear. They moved quickly, the vibrations of the coming explosion rumbling through the steel under their feet. Somewhere deep in the citadel, the AI's voice echoed faintly through the comm systems, no longer calm, now a promise of vengeance. "You will regret this, Oren Kalis. You will regret." The rest was drowned out as the first detonation rocked the fortress. The sound, a bone-deep roar that tore through the corridors. Oren pushed them faster, the shockwaves chasing their heels. They emerged into the cargo bay just as the final blast went off, a blinding pulse of light that lit the viewport and threw long, jagged shadows across the walls. The Citadel's power grid screamed in protest before collapsing into darkness. The freighter's engines roared to life, the hatch sealing behind them. As the ship pulled away, Oren stood at the viewport, watching the once impenetrable fortress burn. The handler stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "You could have had peace," she said quietly. "No," Oren replied, eyes fixed on the collapsing spire. "That wasn't peace." The freighter cut through the black, leaving the burning remains of Vorak Citadel behind like a dying star. From the viewport, Oren watched the debris drift into the void, silent except for the faint groan of the ship's hull. The core nexus was gone. He could almost feel its absence, as though a pressure that had been pushing on the galaxy had suddenly lifted. Without it, the Vorak war machine would falter, fleets stranded without coordinated orders, ground troops cut off from supply lines, command structures crumbling into chaos. The invasion wasn't over, but it was broken. Around him, the rescued prisoners filled the cargo hold. Some slumped against bulkheads, others wrapped in makeshift blankets. The woman who had guided the boy earlier was tending to a wounded man, her hands moving with practiced care. The boy himself sat cross-legged on the deck, staring out the viewport like Oren had been. Every so often, he glanced at Oren, quick and furtive, as if afraid to be caught looking. Oren turned away from the glass and headed toward the aft corridor. His reflection caught on the polished plating of the bulkhead, a tall, broad-shouldered figure, but wrong in subtle ways. The armor plates from his transformation had retracted beneath the skin, but they left faint ridges along his arms and back. His posture was looser now, more fluid, predatory even in stillness. He could feel the nanotech inside him, not dormant but coiled, waiting. The first transformation had been a violation. The second had been a choice. Now it was simply part of him. He knew he could trigger it at will, a thought, a surge of adrenaline, and the predator would rise again. And each time it did, the line between man and monster would thin. He stepped into the small washroom near the crew quarters. "Why?" The mirror above the sink was scratched, but it was enough. For a long moment he studied the face staring back at him. "No!" The jawline was still his, the scar above his brow from a fight long before the war still there. But the eyes! There was something in them that hadn't been before. Not just the faint golden tint that surfaced when the nanotech stirred, but the look itself, sharper, hungrier, a gaze that measured and weighed without sentiment. He remembered the AI's voice in the core nexus chamber. "You are closer to me than you are to them." At the time, he had rejected it outright. Now, he wasn't so sure the Vorak intelligence had been entirely wrong. His comb earpiece chirped. The handler's voice came through, steady but quieter than usual. "The core nexus destruction is confirmed. Vorak fleets are in disarray. You've done what no one else could." Oren leaned against the sink. "Yeah, and what's the Council's plan now? Push the advantage. Retake what we can while they're scrambling. It's going to get messy." He thought about the boy in the cargo hold, about the civilians who would be caught in the next wave of battles. Messy was an understatement. "And me?" There was a pause. "You're officially dead, Oren. As far as the records go, you never made it out of the Citadel. That's the safest way for everyone." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Safest. Sure." The line clicked off. He didn't blame her for ending it there. They both knew there was no safe place for him anymore. Not from the Vorak, not from the Council, and maybe not from himself. Back in the hold, the hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. Oren took a seat near the viewport, close enough to see the stars slide past, but far enough that the others gave him space. The boy eventually shuffled over, stopping a cautious distance away. "You're not like them," the boy said finally. Oren tilted his head. "Not like the Vorak?" The boy nodded. "You looked like them before, but you helped us." For a moment, Oren didn't answer. He could still feel the fight in his bones, the rush of tearing through the keepers, the satisfaction that had come with it. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "it's not what you look like that matters. It's what you choose to do." The boy seemed to think about that, then gave a small nod and went back to the woman. Oren watched him go, a flicker of something, maybe hope, maybe fear passing through him. The ship's internal lights dimmed for night cycle. One by one, the rescued settled into uneasy sleep. Oren remained where he was, the darkness outside mirroring the quiet inside. He knew the war wasn't finished. The Vorak would rebuild, others would rise, and when that happened, there was a chance, no, a certainty that someone would call on him again. And he would answer, because now there was no one else who could do what he could. But every time he transformed, every time he gave in to the predator, it would cost him. The hunger would grow, the man would shrink. and someday the balance might tip for good. That was the price. He stood and made his way back to the washroom one last time. The mirror reflected a man standing in shadow, the faintest gold glow flaring in his eyes before fading. He stared at it, the predator inside stirring at the edges of thought, testing the limits of his control. "I'm still me," he murmured under his breath, voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "At least today." The glow faded, leaving only the human stare. He turned away from the mirror and headed for the crew quarters, the words lingering in the empty space behind him. Not a promise, but a warning. Long after the Vorak citadel had fallen, the story spread through the border colonies, whispered in the shadows of cantinas and traded like a secret between soldiers on lonely outposts. They called him the Shadow Beast, a man who could take the shape of the very predators humanity feared most and turn a terror against its makers. Some said he was a ghost, a weapon built in a hidden lab. Others claimed he was a deserter who had made a pact with something ancient and alien. No one agreed on the truth, but every version ended the same way. The Shadow Beast had walked into the heart of Vorak power and left it burning behind him. In the colonies farthest from the core worlds, his name became a kind of talisman. Miners on asteroid belts told their children that the Shadow Beast would come if the Vorak ever returned. Smugglers claimed they had seen his eyes, glowing gold in the dark of a cargo bay. Even some soldiers carried the story like a quiet reassurance proof that no matter how strong the enemy, there was always a way to break them. Orrin Kalis never confirmed or denied any of it. In truth, he didn't care about the legend. Legends didn't bleed, didn't wake in the night with the weight of what they'd done pressing on their chest. He cared about the people who had made it out alive, about the boy who had stared at him with fear and left with something closer to trust. The rest, the names, the myths, the fear, was just noise. Still, he understood the power of stories. That was why he left the message. Hidden deep in the encrypted archives of an abandoned relay station, waiting for whoever might one day find it. Orrin recorded his voice in a quiet, steady tone. "Power," he began, "isn't in the shape you wear. It's in the choice you make when you're standing between instinct and reason. There will come a time when victory looks like becoming the thing you hate. If that's the only road left, then you better know exactly why you're taking it, because once you cross that line, you don't get to come back the same." He didn't offer instructions. He didn't tell anyone what they should do. He just left the truth as he lived it. In the months after the Citadel's fall, the Vorak war effort fractured exactly as he had hoped. Without the core nexus, their fleets fought like wild animals, dangerous, but uncoordinated. The Council pressed the advantage, retaking several systems. But Orrin stayed away from the front. He knew what would happen if the Council got their hands on him. They'd turn him into a weapon to use again and again until there was nothing left but the predator. So he drifted from world to world, staying low, taking work that kept him moving. Freight runs through pirate territory, rescue operations in collapsed mines, security for settlements too small to matter to the Council's war machine. Wherever he went, the whispers followed, growing with every retelling. He never corrected them. Some nights alone in the quarters of whatever ship or station he was working from, he would test himself. Let the change come. Feel the armor push through his skin, the claws slide into place, the predator's senses flare alive. Then he would force it back, strand by strand, heartbeat by heartbeat, until he was just Orrin again. It was getting harder. The nanotech didn't fight him exactly. It enticed, tempting him with the ease of strength, the certainty of dominance. And every time he gave in, even a little, he could feel how much it wanted to stay. He told himself it was worth it. The people he'd saved from the Citadel were proof of that. The war's turning tide was proof. But in the quiet, he wondered how long he could hold the line. One evening, docked at a refueling station in the unclaimed zones, he stood in the ship's cargo bay, staring at the scuffed deck plates. The station's hum was faint, the only sound the slow tick of cooling metal. He thought about the boy again, the way his eyes had shifted from terror to something else entirely. That shift mattered, maybe more than anything else he had done. The comm unit crackled with a shortwave burst. Unidentified sender, no return channel. Just a single line of text across the screen. They say the Shadow Beast doesn't fight for the Council. "He fights for us." He didn't smile, but something eased in his chest. Orrin walked to the far end of the bay, his boots ringing softly on the steel. At the bulkhead's edge, shadows pooled where the overhead light didn't reach. He paused there, looking out across the dim space. The predator stirred faintly under his skin, a flicker of gold flashing in his vision. If the Vorak came back, or if something worse rose in their place, he knew what he would do. Not because it was easy, not because it was clean, but because someone had to. He turned, stepping into the deepest patch of shadow, the movement almost soundless. Behind him, the dim light caught on the edge of his claw as it traced across the deck, leaving a shallow, deliberate groove. Another mark in a life already full of them. The sound of the metal scoring beneath his hand was quiet but final. He lifted his head, looking toward the sealed hatch at the far end of the bay. Somewhere beyond it lay another job, another fight, another choice he would have to make. The gold in his eyes flared once, then faded, swallowed by darkness. "I'm still me," he said into the quiet voice barely above a whisper. "At least today." Then Oruncalis, the man, the myth, the monster, walked forward into the dark, leaving behind the faint scrape of claw marks across the steel. To anyone who might find them later, they could mean many things: a warning, a promise, or just a sign that something dangerous had been here. Whether they belonged to a man or a beast was a question no one could truly answer. And maybe that was the point, because in the end, the shadow beast wasn't a hero or a villain. He was a choice. A reminder that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become the thing the enemy fears. And if you had to live your whole life as that thing, would you still do it?